All right, so we are stuck on a desert island. I introduced Hannah to a little bit of Gilligan's Island. She thought I was joking. And we watched a little Madagascar to get in the mood for this. All right, so we've built somewhat of a carburetor here, and we got rid of the monkey. And also, the downside of the monkey is they poo in the carburetor, and the poo, it blocks this right here, which is called the what?
Main jet.
Main metering jet. All right, and that blocks everything off. So we have fuel that will come from our fuel tank down into our fuel inlet. We have a float set up so that the float, as the fuel level goes down, the float will fall down. It will open up our valve and fuel will come into here, keeping it at a constant level, which gives us a constant level across the main discharge nozzle. Fuel flows down through our main metering jet, up and out of the discharge nozzle, because the discharge nozzle is located in the small of the Venturi. We added a little air bleed with air comes in here and mixes with that and does what? Emulsifies, and that allows little droplets to go out. Would you like to see what it looks like when it's actually running?
Yes.
I knew you'd say yes. I was hoping you would anyway. Think this will work? It's supposed to be a video. There we go. Well, we don't see any fuel coming out right now.
The idle.
Idle, and where's the fuel for that?
It's above the flap.
It's above the flap?
Not the flap, yeah.
Above the throttle. Here we go. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Should we want to see it one more time?
Yeah.
All right. Anybody recognize the sound? What engine is this? It's the ground power unit. So we can see that at about 1,000 RPM or so, it starts to work out of here. But before that, it's going through the idle circuit. So, all right, we've got all this down. Well, what problems have we encountered so far when we started this up last time?
It only works at full throttle.
Only works full throttle.
I know. We need a valve somewhere.
We need a valve somewhere. All right, so yeah, I want black. So here we go.
That's why I took a break from putting the runway.
All right, so we kind of got this going here like that. And so we need to put a valve in here. All right, should I put the valve down here?
No, above it.
No, I should put it above it. All right. And let's see here. I don't want to, got to think about how I want this valve to sit in here. We'll make it go this way. All right, so now that we got a valve set in there, we can try it one more time. And we go in there and we start cranking it, and what's going to happen?
It's not going to start.
It's not going to start. Why is it not going to start?
Is your idle
Pressure.
There's not enough airflow through the Venturi that this is going to work at all. So that's not a good thing. And let me think. You know what? I'm going to move my valve just a little bit. We're going to go the other way. Just for the sake of ease of drawing. All right. Spot right there where it moves from. That's solid. There we go. All right, so we got our valve in there. So, well, if we started it on the primer, and a primer is something that's going to draw fuel out of the fuel tank and go through a handheld little plunger. You can pull it back like a big syringe and spray it, and it's going to inject fuel somewhere downstream of the carburetor, probably near the cylinders or something like that, to give it a burst of fuel up there as we're starting it, or we can spray it and then hit the starter. So if we do that, it'll start and it'll run on that primer. And then if we were to open the valve, the throttle plate, enough that air would flow through here, we would be good to go. So provided that we were willing to get in a plane that didn't have any idle capability and died every time we pulled it back to idle, we'd be good to go. We just have to go at least, 1200 RPM and up. So is that acceptable to you guys? Are you ready to leave the island on that?
No. Sure.
Okay, sure. Well, if we are, then we're done. And good luck on the test. So, but we don't want to do that. We want to create something over here that actually is going to work and give us an idle. Now, of course, the problem with the way I've drawn this is it's not going to work out that well. But we can kind of do some theory work here. All right, so if I want to create an idle system, the way the idle system works, again, it's a little not to scale at this point, is the idle system, let me think. Well, I could change the butterfly around, do it on the other side, but still not going to be quite to scale. So keep changing my mind here. All right. So the way the idle system is going to work is we need to have fuel drawn up on this side of the throttle plate. And if this were idling, and we'll get there, but if this were idling, what kind of pressure do I have right in this area here? Okay, so ambient, atmospheric in here. So it's just all the same here as it here, and it's out here the same. What kind of pressure do I have up here? What do I have? A negative, a suction, very low pressure. Why do I have low pressure here?
Because the piston is drawing in here.
Because the piston they're moving, they're pulling back, and every time that piston comes back, and you think about the size of even the 290, which we have a little over 4-inch bore, it's pulling back, and the air's got to come from somewhere, and all the air that we're going to get is really just through here. And in some cases, there'll be a little hole that's drilled through here, so you have one extra little passage. So other than that, you're really restricting it, and so that's creating a vacuum down there. So you have this extremely low pressure or a vacuum that's been built up right in here. Well, that's a good thing, because what we can do for an idle system is we can put a little hole there, we can put one here, we can put one up here. So we can have 3 little passages if we want, 2, 3, 4, whatever we feel is going to work. A smaller engine will probably only have 2. Larger engine is going to have a few more. And we'd have these, and usually one is about lined up right here. Well, sometimes you have one down here. So I'll tell you what, we'll put one there, and we'll stick one right about there. So one there. Okay. Now all of this has to be more in line with the actual level of the fuel. But we're just kind of pretend, because I gotta draw it in here somehow. All right. So what we've got here then, we have passages. They're all open here. And remember, this kind of has to be at the same level. Otherwise, it's not going to work too well. But what's going to happen is we have fuel is going to fill up this, there, there, and up in there. And we have this very low pressure area right here. So when we start up the aircraft, I'm going to say, depending on how much space we have right here, and depending on exactly where this is located, this little spot right here creates what?
Venturi.
It does create a little Venturi. So that little Venturi can actually suck fuel right out of there. Now, if it's above that, then it's not so much a Venturi. So it really just depends on the spot. But that can suck some fuel, and this can suck out some fuel. And there we go. Our fuel is going to mix in at that point. So now we've got an idle. All right? And the thing is, we have to think about transitioning. So at some point, we're going to start going a little bit faster idle. So let's say we're about 500, 600 RPM, and I got enough fuel out of these two right here to make it happy. Now this isn't going to come on until about what? About 1,000 RPM. There's no magic number to that. So about 1,000, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. So this is fine at 500. This doesn't come on until 1,000 or so. So what happens is I start opening up the throttle is I'm going to start needing more fuel than these two things, little idle jets, can produce. So the engine's going to do what?
Suck it from the from down below in the Venturi.
Can't do that. There's not enough air movement. So we're talking about, let's say, if these two right here are good enough for 500 to 600 RPM, this is good at 1,000. What happens between 600 and 1,000?
It's going to drop in the bottom one as well.
Well, it would go lean if it wasn't for this one right here.
Yeah.
All right, so as this valve opens up more and more, it's going to eventually uncover this one. And as it uncovers that third one will add a little bit more. All right? So that's how we can get a little bit more. Not all of them have that, but some do. And what are we missing here, though?
Isn't the fuel which comes in there also
Mixture
mixed
control.
with air?
We don't have any sort of mixture control whatsoever. So there's no way to control this. So if we really wanted to get into some way and say, well, we want to fine tune this, right? Because, we're pretty happy on the desert island. We know that if we go home that we're going to have to start doing laundry and, OER and all that. So, kids are going to bug us. So it's like, well, might as well just stay here, really. So we might as well make it perfect while we're at it, right?
Out of coconuts.
We'll make it out of somebody's hairpins here. Why is that not working?
You have
Oh, I got to do that. Thank you. All right. Yeah, I know. All right, so we'll make that a little bigger. And what we get is, on your carburetor, there's a little thumb screw, so you can do it yourself. Do a different color. With a little needle. It'll go to that. Very concentric, by the way. And as it'll be threads here. And as we screw it in, we will make this little space a little bit smaller. And as we screw it out, we make it a little bit bigger. Now, because our particular carburetor so far resembles more of a Stromberg carburetor. Well, actually, before I get into that, what are we missing here now? Idle air bleed is exactly right. So just like we needed an idle air bleed over here, we need one over here, which is nothing more than finding just some way to, I'm going to bring it right off here. Now, why would I want to bring it right off there?
It's ambient.
It's ambient. Anytime you're behind the Venturi, you get ambient air. So always look for that. Carburetors like to do a lot of that ambient air stuff right behind there. So now we've got our little idle air bleed. And that's going to do what for the fuel? Emulsify it. It also, not only does it emulsify it, more about the main discharge nozzle. Without it, the fuel tends to come out in clumpiness, big droplets. So if I have big droplets, what does that mean as opposed to little droplets? Harder to vaporize because little droplets have more what? Have more surface area. So more surface area, it's easily vaporizing. Bigger molecules, not so much vaporizing. So this way we got that going. All right, so as I was saying, we really have no way to, like some carburetors, most carburetors, they have a way to shut the fuel off at the carburetor. The Stromberg that you're working on does not have a way to shut it off. You just have to go up here to a fuel shutoff valve in the fuel line. But aside from that, some of you have noticed that your book tells you that the way that you set the idle mixture control is to set it, and we even talked about it in class, and then pull the red knob back, and the red knob will shut off the fuel, and it will go from its a little extra rich position to what?
Peak power.
Peak power, best power, and then it'll fall off. So you can watch the RPM do a little bit of climb and then drop. Or if you have a manifold pressure, it's going to do what?
Increase manifold
A
pressure.
little more suction, not pressure. It'll increase the suction, which means decrease manifold pressure. So you see manifold pressure go down and then go up. When the engine is off, what should the manifold pressure read?
I'd say
Atmospheric.
pressure.
Barometer.
It's a barometer, so it should read about what?
29 inches.
About 30 inches. Okay. When it's we'll get into that later. So we've got that, but here we have just an idle mixture and I have no way to shut off the fuel. So how can I effectively adjust this? And now this is the problem that you have with the Strombergs. Now out in the field, what we do is we'll put it all the way in, back it out about a turn and a half, and most of the time that's about good enough. It just seems to run well. If the pilot's not complaining of fouled spark plugs, if it starts easy and runs cleanly, we just call it a day because it's a little difficult to do it. I'm going to show you, but you can do it on our little test stand with the ground power unit. So if I've got my gauges, RPM, and manifold. Manifold's going to be, let's see about, I'll make that a darker color, I think. 10, 20, so this will be about 15. And RPM, we'll have about 500, 600, so that'd be 550. All right, so when we're running it, we get a nice idle. So first thing I want to do is, honestly, when I set up a carburetor on an aircraft engine, there's a set screw on the throttle. And that little set screw just limits how far closed it can go. I back it out. I don't want it bothering me. And what I do is I go in the aircraft, I run it up, I get it warm, and then I set the throttle in the aircraft where I want the idle. And I'll lock it because all aircraft throttles have a lock of some sort on it. And I'll lock it right where I want it. Say, that's a great idle. Right there. Then I can shut off the aircraft, go outside, and adjust the screw until it just barely touches the little stop. Just a kiss, a peck, like you're kissing your sister, right? So, and then get back in the airplane, and then start it up, and then advance the throttle, pull it back, make sure everything works fine. And if I'm happy with that, then that's good to go. I will say that I usually, though, before I set that screw, I set this because this will affect the speed a little bit. So I should rephrase that to say I back the screw out, then I adjust the mixture, then the last thing I do is set that little screw. But to adjust the mixture on our ground power unit, what you can do is get it set at a nice idle, right where you want it. And you kind of have to adjust the screw on this one because we don't have something you can lock, so you do have to set the screw. All right, so you get it idling. Our ground power unit likes to idle a little more than 600. It's happier more around 700, 800. It depends on the carburetor. As you guys now figured out, the carburetors are, who knows what they go to. So it depends on the carburetor. So I'll set it, the RPM, something that makes it happy, and then you can start screwing this out. Or you can have it all the way in and start screwing it in. As we get near best power, this is going to start climbing. This is going to go which way? Down. It's going to start going down. It's going to go down because we're not messing with the throttle plate. So this is a kind of a hard concept for some. The reason why this manifold pressure is getting more suction is because we're not messing with the throttle plate at all. We're messing with a mixture that's causing the engine to run faster with this throttle plate in the same spot. So if this throttle plate doesn't move and the RPM goes up, what does this pressure do?
It goes down.
Is more suction, right? Now it's totally different. If I'm running it and I open the throttle plate up, well, then this is going to go up and this is going to go up. But as long as I'm just messing with this, I can watch this start to drop, 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 and then it's going to get to a spot where it's going to stop. That's its lowest, then start going the other way. So what happens when it's its lowest?
Peak power.
That's peak power. And so I want it on the rich side of peak power. So if I'm screwing it in and I get to peak power, I stop and do what?
Back it out.
Back it out a little bit. All right, so if I'm watching this, it'll peak, climb, 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 and climb. And if it's 600 is peak and starts dropping, go back to 600 and do what? Back it out till it gets rich by about 25 to 50. Got it? So this right here, we want 25 to 50 RPM rich. This is going to be, it just so happens that it's about 0.25 to 0.50 inches rich. And this gauge on our ground power unit is so much more stable and accurate, right, guys? Yeah, the RPM is kind of bouncing around like that. So, so you want to watch that. So we can do that. So we've set this up. We've got that all going. And really, for those of you that have done your Stromberg stuff, that's about it, correct? No, what am I missing? A what? A manual mixture control. Wow, you guys are just really, man, making this hard. You never want to go home.
No, we won't go.
Well, without a manual mixture control, what's going to happen as we take off?
As you climb,
Go up the round with the fuel.
start running rich.
As we climb, it's going to start running rich, right? And we want to go up a long way in this aircraft, probably right away, because if this thing, our coconuts fall apart, we want to be able to glide from our island all the way back to Hawaii, or from Madagascar to wherever the next mainland is. I don't know.
Africa.
Huh?
Africa.
Africa. No, I don't think that's right.
I'm a geology major.
All right, so let's clean this up a little bit so I can get some more room here. All right, so you guys want a mixture control. Well, let's put it to a committee vote here. We have two styles that we can use. So let's start with the Strombergy style. Strombergy's not a real word. All right. Now we need some room here to work with. Okay. Remember, not to scale, not to scale. All right, so, well, since we've got rid of our monkey, we can actually close this off. And now what do I have on top of here? I have air up there. Well, if I seal this up, so we've got somebody on the committee who we've had to vote off the island, and that person said, well, you know what? I may want to do aerobatics on the way back. So let's seal this. It was probably Tim. So let's seal this up real well so that no air can leak out whatsoever. Is that really going to work for us? Well, the air kind of gets trapped in here, and that doesn't work out so well. So we need some sort of vent on it. And if we put a vent on it, we can start talking about how we're going to make a mixture control. So I kind of can't do the sliding discs here. But what we can do here, huh? What?
You can do it top down.
I could do top down. Let me think if how I can do this. Oops. All right, so I can take something from there, and I can take something from, oops, do I want to do that? Yes, that was perfect. And something from right here. No, not now. All right, so what kind of air do I have here? All right, so I got ambient air there. And what do I got over here? Venturi Suction. Oh, let's go green for suction here. All right, so I got Venturi Suction right here. We got suction. And right here, I'm going to put some sort of mixing valve. And that valve has the ability to, I can't think of how to draw one real well. Make a gradient. No, I was kind of thinking.
You should make it bigger.
Something like that. Does that work for you? All right. So it's a bit of a mixing valve. So I can rotate it one way or another. So I can have all yellow, all green, or a combination of the two. Work with me so far? All right. So when we're operating, I'll make this, we'll go, yeah, we'll do that. We'll go wide open throttle here. Wide open throttle. We are moving fast. Now that's what those colors are going to look like. All right, this is still low pressure up here because we're on the other side of the Venturi, but the low pressure actually comes all the way down into here. I'm sorry, it's actually low pressure is in this area. And thinking this through. What happens when you go on the fly? We're not going to connect that there. We're just going to leave it open, and we're going to say, well, it gets ambient pressure. All right. Normally, I'd actually bring it back down and put it right here behind the Venturi. That'd be the best place to go, is behind the Venturi. But that'd mess up my drawing now. So behind the Venturi is a good place, just like we got right here. We can bring it down here. So we're just going to leave it open. So we've got some nice ambient air. This is definitely suction. All right. And so while we're running, I've got it kind of like here. So I've got a 50-50 blend. I've got some yellow and some green. Right? I can do that. Or I can move my valve a little bit so it's all yellow. Let's go all yellow. Follow me with that? All right, so we got all yellow coming through here. So what's my pressure up here? Ambient. Okay, so that's where we designed it to work, wasn't it? So nothing's really changed. You put this cap on here, and nothing's changed. Does everybody agree with me on that one? Yeah. Okay, so what good is that doing? Well, nothing. It's running full rich. All right. What's happening to my little bit of green? Well, actually on the Stromberg, it doesn't block it off. This is just so a little bit of green mixes in there, but there's so much of this. In fact, we could even make that twice as big. There we go. There's so much of this that little bit of suction, it don't matter. Yeah.
Which direction is the green going?
Well, it's suction. So if it's suction, and here's the source, it's going to be going this way. So it's going to be robbing just a little bit of the yellow and pulling it back in just a little bit. Right? But this is ambient. So it's there. All right, so that's my full rich. Now if I want to lean it out just a little bit, I'm going to move that valve so that it's picking up a little bit of green. All right, so now the green, let me think here.
The green is actually sucking the yellow in, right?
Yes.
It's taking away pressure.
So the more I open up the green, the more it's going to start pulling yellow out. And so if I start pulling yellow out, this becomes just a little bit less than it was before. And if this is a little less than it was before, then this and this are going to start equalizing. And the closer I get to these equalizing, the less fuel is going to come out. So what if let's go to the extreme. So now I close off, and all I've got left is green. So I put green on here, this suction. It's all suction. What's the pressure differential between here and here?
That's true.
There's no pressure differential whatsoever. So really, your Venturi's not doing anything, is it? Because you put the Venturi suction on both sides. So what's going to happen to my fuel flow? It's going to stop. So all we have to do is regulate how much of this green we're letting through and how much of the yellow we're letting through, or how much of the suction, how much of the ambient. And that is really kind of the throttling thing of exactly how we're leaning it out. Yeah.
So in the Stromberg, the two discs that go on top of each other?
Yeah, I couldn't draw the disc, sorry.
No, so you just said that you control how much green you let in. On
Yeah.
that one, doesn't all the green always come in, and you're just regulating how much yellow comes in?
Yeah, you can do it that way. Sorry.
Wait,
Kind of going by the
that's how
fly
it
here.
works, or can you actually regulate?
No, you're actually regulating it.
Wait, so you can actually slow down the suction? 'Cause I didn't see how that happened with the discs.
Now let's see here. Let's pull up a Stromberg diagram. All right, so in the Stromberg, and this is kind of what I tried to draw, but if we look right here, what do we have here? That's our ambient. Where's the ambient coming from? Behind the Venturi. Then here's the suction. Where's the suction coming from? Just right on top of the Venturi. So this is the suction and this is the ambient. So if we look right here, you'll see that it's really kind of both open all of the time. And then we have a passageway going through. So as long as this passage is large, it's letting all the ambient, I guess if you will, come up. So some of it is going to come out this way. And some of it is allowed to go this way. But as we change the discs, you start controlling how much of the ambient. So there's just a little tiny bit barely getting through there. And which way is that little tiny bit's going to go? Probably out this way. And this is going to be going this way too. So this has got all that suction then on top of the fuel. So if you put all of that suction on top of the fuel, the pressure difference between here and here becomes zero. Yeah.
How much does the pressure inside of the shoot, I don't know the right word.
Here?
fuel?
Exactly, where the float sits on top of the fuel. How much does the air pressure actually has an effect on the float?
Doesn't, I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah, and how high or low it goes, I don't think it does.
Doesn't have any effect.
Yeah, in theory it shouldn't. In actuality it shouldn't. Yeah. So, all right, so you can see kind of what I tried to draw here with our little thing. It's similar, but this is nicer. I'll admit it. All right.
What did I say in the oral? That if it wasn't a gradient, it was toggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, Prince said, "Oh, just think of it as a toggle switch. It's like suction, no suction." But let's go. Oh, that's terrible now. Do the best I can. All right. Thing is, though, we got to try it out. So this time we'll put Ken in the cockpit over here, and we got to try out our little mixture control here. So we start it up. Is it going to idle? Oh, it idles sweet, doesn't it? And we dialed this in right over here, so we're a nice 25, 50 degrees rich. Why do I want it 25 to 50 degrees rich?
Detonation?
No, to transition or between the circuits? Or?
Well, what you're probably going to read and be told is because it helps keep the airplane cool on the ground. Now, if that were true, Lycoming and Continental wouldn't both tell you to aggressively lean once you get the engine started, because they both tell you that. Once you get the aircraft started, aggressively lean on the ground. Therefore, that negates the whole theory of cooling. So probably the only other conclusion that I can draw, why would you want it excessively rich on the ground, would be there's no choke, so you want an excessively rich mixture to get it started. And once it's started, pull it back, aggressively lean. What happens? Why do I want to aggressively lean? You're going to foul the plugs. Why am I going to foul the plugs? There's too much lead in the fuel, and the temperatures are too low to let all those other chemicals we talked about work. So you're going to get all these little lead balls that are going to build up around this spark plug, and it's going to foul the spark plug. Sometimes you will see pilots, mechanics do, down at the end of the runway, running the snot out of their airplane. And you're like, what are they doing? Well, what they're doing is they're running up high RPM, leaning it excessively, and trying to get as much heat build up in the spark plugs to burn off all that stuff as you can. And it does work. But so back to this, we got everything working well. We started up, and let's see, we got a little cable hooked up here so that this thing rotates on us. And we're in the full rich position, and it's working great. And I say, Ken, go ahead and pull it all the way back to lean it. And it should die because we're, right? Because in theory, we're going to get all that suction. And it doesn't work. Well, how come it didn't work? What did we do wrong? Where's my Cricket app? Chirp, 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 chirp.
Full lean.
I went to full lean. Right? When I went all the way to lean and I let nothing but the green come through, shouldn't it have equalized this and died?
Because it's still, the way you set it up, it's still running on idle, so it gets the air, I guess, through this extra inlet where the Venturi is.
I think I followed you.
The lower of the discharge nozzle?
Can you guys see what's happening? What color should this be right now in idle?
Yellow.
Should be yellow.
Mm-hmm.
And what color should this be?
Yellow.
So that's yellow and that's yellow. What's this?
Yellow.
So how does that affect? And not only that, is any fuel coming out of this?
No.
So is this going to affect anything? No, but it is coming out of this, which in theory, even though I drew it too tall, if we could pull a suction on this, would this part work?
No. Well, it depends.
Depends. If this pressure is equal to this pressure,
Right.
Then no.
would it work? No, but this is not. It's ambient because it's all getting pulled down to here. If I ran a line from up here down here, then that's a whole other story, but it doesn't. So the point is, there's no suction here. There's no suction being generated. So there's no suction right here. So if there's no suction here, then this is going to work just fine. If we go back to our other drawing, the nice one. If we look at this, we say, okay, so let's just think about this one at idle. So I'm going to close this off. And we got to look over here. So here's where it's coming out of on the side. But if this is closed off right now, what is all this pressure right here?
Ambient.
It's just ambient. So this is ambient and this is ambient. So if those two are ambient, what is this?
Ambient.
No matter where you put this, this is ambient and this is ambient. So it doesn't matter. It's not going to work. Now, this is the funny part. With this Stromberg carburetor, I told you that it was often airplanes it's wired shut. And people will tell you it doesn't work. Your guys' carburetor didn't work today. It's the first time I've seen that in a long time, but I didn't take it apart to see why. But they work really well. But at what RPM is it going to start working? At least above idle. So pilots are out there getting ready to shut off their engine, pull the mixture out, and just waiting. And the plane just keeps running and running and running. They say, these stupid Strombergs, they don't work. Well, no, they work fine. They just don't do what you're expecting it to do. So, all right, discard. Yeah.
Is that why in the chapter you'll say to run it up to 1,000 and pull the mixture back?
No, it says that so that you get the spark plugs hot and burn off the lead fouling that you've
So why would it not be for this?
because this just doesn't work that way. POH wouldn't make sense. All right, I'm going to see if I can erase some of this.
What would the benefit be to being able to change the mixture at idle?
I'm going to show you. All right, so that's that's one style that we could have used. And if I knew how to make my eraser really big, really quick, that would be helpful. Don't.
With brush size,
Brush
I believe.
size, yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Uh-huh.
Now it's too big.
Watch out. There goes your masterpiece.
Dude, that's 16.
All right, so we're kind of back to where we started, right? All right, so that was one style. We call that the back suction mixture style. But before we put it to a committee vote, we've got to decide if we want to go with a different style.
Why is it called back suction?
Because I'm creating a back suction upon here, a suction on the back side of things. What I could do is I could put a valve, well, for lack of a better spot, I'll put it here. But same theory. I could put a valve, actually a rotating valve, but it'd be very hard for me to draw a rotating valve. I could put a little valve that I could control right here. And I could go and put that to some sort of control in the cockpit. And so what happens is that at full rich, this is wide open. And so the fuel is being metered by what at this point?
The butterfly valve.
This valve.
The what?
This valve.
No, if this is wide open right here, what's metering?
Oh, the
Your
metering.
metering jet.
The main metering jet right there is doing all the metering. All right, and so this is going to work just like it did before. But now when I want to lean this out, I'm going to start closing this off, this little valve. And when this valve gets to the exact same size as that, what's doing the metering? They both are. All right, so if the orifice size here is the same as it is with the main metering jet, they're both doing the metering. But as soon as this valve gets just a little bit smaller than the main metering jet, what's going to do the metering? The valve is. And now what we've done is we've restricted the flow of fuel out of here, and it's going to get leaner. And we keep going a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and it gets leaner and leaner and leaner. Until some point, we pull it out all the way, and I block this off. What's going to happen when I block it off? The engine dies. Now, that's really cool, because if we were back here at idle, and we were trying to adjust all of this right here, this, by the way, is tied into this right here, so I would have to kind of go. This is where it's getting its fuel from. Somewhere in here. Not to scale. So this fuel is really coming up through here, up there. So since the fuel is really starting right in here and going through, if I close this off, what's going to happen to the fuel here? It's going to shut off. But here's what's really cool. If you have this type of system and you had your engine idling perfectly at 550 RPM, perfectly, and I pull this valve all the way back, and I had my mixture adjusted perfectly, what will this do?
Go up about 50 RPM.
It'll go about 25 to 50 RPM and then drop. And that is where most carburetors are, so it's really easy to adjust them. So you just get it in the cockpit, pull it out, and if the needle is at 550 and just drops, what does that mean?
Lean.
You're right, I'm too lean. So get out, screw this screw out just a little bit, get back in, start it up, bring up the idle a little bit to clear it out, pull back your idle mixture, and now it goes from 550 to 650 and then dies. What'd you do?
Too rich.
That's a little too rich. Screw it back in a little bit, try it again. So it's just a process of trial and error. It's helpful if you're out in the field to actually have two people do it so you can get tired getting out of the airplane.
Are you
But-
just doing quarter turns, half turns, or?
Yeah,
really-
that's about it. Yeah, eighth, quarter, half, depending on where you want to be. So, what do you like better? This is the.
This one.
All right. So yeah,
The
it's,
other one better.
yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not gonna.
That's why I'm doing the runway.
That's I'm gonna just hit Control Z until we get back to it. Yeah,
How do you shut off this Stromberg?
with the key. quite literally. So it's funny. I told you that I flew a Cessna 140 for 200 and some hours. That's what I learned in, and well, except for when those planes are working. And so that was you had to shut it off that way because that's its design. So when I transitioned to the 150 and I was flying with the flight instructor and went to shut down, I just did what I always did, reach over and hit the key. And he just kind of looks at me, he's like, "You sure you're a mechanic?" I'm like, "Oh, I forgot, it's got a different carburetor." So all right, so now we've got a manual mixture control working on there.
That key is not on the fuel system, is it?
It's the magnetos. You're shutting off the magnetos. Yeah, I definitely prefer this style. From a mechanic standpoint, from an operator standpoint, this is a lot easier.
Can you draw the orifice for a inverted system? So, the one that's designed to operate while inverted?
You don't want to operate a carburetor inverted.
No, there's an orifice that limits, that makes it work while it's inverted.
No.
On the Spitfire.
They use a pressure carburetor. They don't use a float carburetor.
On the early one, yeah, it's a float.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
All right. So there we go. So we've got that going. So we've got idle. We've got mixture control. Anything else that we can think of that we should throw on this thing?
The throttle stuff.
Well, why don't we take a break and think about that?